Can a demon go on to surpass Muzan? Well, Muzan didn't let that happen as he practically had every demon in his control. But there were a few which weren't under him like Nezuko. So what would happen if Nezuko actually surpassed Muzan right when she turned into a demon? Will the Demon King Muzan die an instant death? Will Giyu die at her hands in the very first episode? What will the effects be on Tanjiro and the Demon Slayers? And most importantly, will she be able to resist his urges and not devour a human? Let's find out. Tanjiro comes down Mount Kumatori, and while going back up during the night, he is stopped by a local villager urging him to stay the night. Because, you know, young lad, dark night, mountain, the combination never really has a good outcome. In any case, Tanjiro agrees to stay the night with the villager, as he listens to his story of demons that terrorize Japan at night. Tanjiro doesn't bother much with the demon stories, thinking of them as fake, and falls asleep. Yeah, we all know how that goes, right? The next day, as Tanjiro climbs the mountain, he smells blood while nearing his home. To his utter surprise, he spots his younger brother Rokuta running towards him, covered in blood. The young Kamado isn't able to utter a single word. However, he points to a cave before he falls unconscious. Tanjiro gets a whiff of his mother's blood coming from inside the cave and decides to follow it. However, as soon as he nears the end, he's tackled by Nezuko, who has grown monstrous teeth and nails, similar to the demons that the villager warned Tanjiro about. As Nezuko tries to eat Tanjiro, our boy does his best to not let her overpower him, while also trying to save his mother, who's lying unconscious inside. Suddenly, Nezuko is kicked off of Tanjiro by a mysterious figure who draws his sword. This swordsman turns out to be the sponsor of this video. Wait, trust me on this one. It's actually a great product, and I've been using it for the past month. Introducing you to the Poly AI app that lets you create an AI chatbot for yourself, or practically any character you like. If you see here, I've created a chatbot of my precious Nezuko-chan, and I'm going to ask her out on a date. Well, that cannot go any worse now, can it? While I'm at this, I might just ask the other ladies of the DS-verse on a date. Well, at least I got to find out that the app works. And if you're a much more creative individual than me, it'll work even more for you. So download the app from the link in the description and use my code ION6969 to unlock all the features. And back to the story. Tanjiro yells out in desperation for the swordsman to spare the creature, which is in fact his sister. The swordsman, who's revealed to be none other than the water Hashira Giyu, activates his 11th form. However, something inside of Nezuko changes. Giyu senses this change and the approaching calamity, but before he could make a decision to either fight or run, he gets impaled by a kick from Nezuko, killing the Hashira on the spot. The sound of Giyu's lifeless body hitting the ground wakes up Kei, and she's horrified to see a monster in what used to be her precious daughter. Before Tanjiro is able to comfort his mother, she dozes off to her final sleep due to internal injuries, leaving the siblings behind. You would think this was the worst of it, but there's more. Suddenly, Nezuko falls to the ground, unconscious, giving Tanjiro time to think and make sense of what is happening. As Tanjiro ponders what could be done in this dire situation, he remembers his brother Rokuta, who has passed out outside. As Tanjiro inches closer to his brother's body, the fear of losing him starts to set in. Tanjiro discovers that Rokuta, who had lost a lot of blood, is now dead, as his body lays lifeless in Tanjiro's arms. Before Tanjiro could even start mourning the loss of his younger brother, he realizes that someone is approaching him from behind by their smell. Tanjiro realizes that it's the smell of the old man who sheltered him. However, he also smells fear in the man's body. As Tanjiro turns to explain what had happened, the man starts to run away from him, shouting, "Stay away! Stay away!" Tanjiro tries his best to explain what happened, but it is of no use as the man had already fled the scene. Tanjiro, utterly confused by the circumstances, turns towards his brother, only to realize that Nezuko was standing right behind him and was the actual reason behind the old man running away. Tanjiro concludes that the old man is going to snitch on them to the villagers, and soon there will be a crowd here aiming for Nezuko's neck. He grabs Nezuko's hand and forces her to wait in the cave while he buries both his mother and siblings. But the worst had already come to pass. Soon a mob of angry villagers will arrive at the cave's entrance and start burning it and its surroundings. Tanjiro tries to rationalize with them, stating that his sister needs to see a doctor and that she'll be fine and won't hurt anyone. The villagers pay no attention to Tanjiro's words and instead start assaulting him for harboring a demon. In the scuffle between him and the villagers, Tanjiro gets a deep cut right on his neck and starts bleeding profusely. Tanjiro falls to the ground and starts choking on his own blood, still begging for the villagers to spare his sister, as she's the only family he's got left. Suddenly, a loud roar comes screeching out of of the cave. And before anyone can suspect what's happening, Nezuko dashes towards the entrance and reveals herself with large tentacles coming out of her back. Before the villagers could either attack her or run, Nezuko whips her tentacle and kills everyone in one swoop, painting the snow on the mountain crimson red. Nezuko spots Tanjiro and rests his head over her lap while desperately trying to stop his blood. Tanjiro asks Nezuko to try and live a good life, and as the sun starts to rise, Nezuko's skin starts burning, and her blood starts dripping onto Tanjiro. Nezuko gives out a loud wail, which triggers some kind of mutation in her blood. Nezuko's blood drips down her chin and mixes in with Tanjiro's wound, after which it starts to violently run amok inside him. Tanjiro too starts going through the demon transformation, and before both her and Tanjiro could be burned to a crisp, Nezuko drags Tanjiro inside. Meanwhile, all this is reported to the Demon Slayer Corps by Giyu's Kasugai crows. Much to their shock, Kagaya exclaims that the birth of another demon that could create new demons could actually deal more damage to Japan than Muzan, and that they should make it their first priority to deal with them. On the other side, Muzan too is confused, as he is unable to establish his telepathic link to the demon he just created, which has never happened before. He consults with Kokushibo in the Infinity Castle, who states this to be a black swan, which must be looked at carefully. In the cave, Nezuko is able to communicate normally with Tanjiro as they plan to weed out Muzan and kill him for what he did to their family. However, they decide it is best that they leave the cave, totally oblivious that the exact same place was going to turn into a battlefield the very same night. As the sun falls, a gate to the Infinity Castle opens right before Tanjiro's home near the cave, and an unknown demon exits it, while the demon slayers, along with Mitsuri, Muichiro, Shinobu, Tengen, and Daki, surround the cave to surprise Nezuko and Tanjiro in a confrontation. As soon as Nezuko and Tanjiro are about to exit the cave, Tengen readies his explosive traps to surprise them. However, in a wild turn of events, before Tanjiro and Nezuko could exit the cave along with all the trees surrounding the area are cut in half. The demon slayers are shocked. However, they divert their attention to Kokushibo, the Upper Moon One, who had just arrived at the scene. Kokushibo notices the blood splattered across the snow due to Nezuko's assault and immediately realizes that he might be dealing with someone of his own caliber or even beyond. Suddenly, a transformed Tanjiro attacks Kokushibo, dragging him away from the battle. While the Hashiras are left behind, Mitsuri informs the others that the female demon is nowhere in sight. Muichiro realizes that they've made a grave mistake, and he immediately orders everyone except the Hashiras to run as far away as possible. The lower-leveled slayer hesitates for a moment. However, this hesitation flips their fates as Nezuko flanks them, cutting them to pieces with her tentacles. Daki is able to save some of the slayers as he escorts them to safety, while Tengen activates the smokescreen to let the others escape along with Daki. Finally, the dust of the first assault settles, and Tengen, Muichiro, Mitsuri, and Shinobu get their first clear glimpse of Nezuko. Nezuko, with her tentacles crawling out of her back, takes a stance to fight the slayers, as Shinobu states that she might be the level of an Upper Moon. Meanwhile, Kokushibo is able to momentarily overpower Tanjiro and cut off his arms. Tanjiro, healing parts of his body for the first time after becoming a demon, struggles a bit, but quickly learns the trick. A grueling battle ensues between the two, wherein Kokushibo starts chopping Tanjiro limb by limb, with the latter regenerating faster than before after every cut. Kokushibo, realizing that Tanjiro is only growing stronger with each passing second, decides to end the charade, cut him into a million tiny pieces, and absorb him quickly so as not to give him time to regenerate. He activates his 14th form, Catastrophe 10-Man Crescent Moon, raining a volley of slashes down Tanjiro's body. In the end, Tanjiro is rendered into a pile of gushy flesh, just like how his siblings had been just a day prior. Kokushibo then moves on to absorb him, stating that Muzan would be able to study the exponential increase in the powers by examining their cells through him. Kokushibo fully absorbs Tanjiro and Muzan via his telepathy, orders him to abandon the fight, and let the Demon Slayer weaken Nezuko a bit, after which they'll sweep in and capture her. A gate to the Infinity Castle opens. However, before Kokushibo could actually take a step in, suddenly his grip loosens and his blade falls to the ground. Kokushibo takes a deep breath as suddenly his whole body gets covered in flames, burning him deeply. It is revealed that Tanjiro had actually awakened his blood demon art, which turned out to be the same as what Nezuko had in the original series. Tanjiro's cells start to separate from Kokushibo's body as the latter starts gaining more and more control. Kokushibo, whose body had suffered major burns, tries to recuperate using his healing. However, the flesh over the burns is unable to regenerate. Tanjiro takes hold of this opportunity, and before Kokushibo can reach for his sword, he covers his hands in his own blood, lighting them on fire. He then proceeds to beat down Kokushibo into a burnt crispy potato sandwich with his very own fists of fury. While Kokushibo is driven to the brink of death, Tanjiro, through some of his blood assimilating with Kokushibo's, is able to hear Muzan telling him that he doesn't know how they were able to derive this kind of power from his blood. However, he'll soon find out and end them nonetheless. But you'd ask what's happening with Nezuko. Well, on the other side of the forest, Nezuko is able to keep attacking the Demon Slayer cores, with no side gaining any advantage of any kind, as Nezuko's strength is fading due to her not having devoured a human since turning into a demon. The Demon Slayers, not realizing what's happening with Nezuko, decide to rush in and capitalize on the provided opportunity with Nezuko being weakened. As they are about to attack her simultaneously, Tanjiro intervenes, saving Nezuko while lighting the whole area on fire in order to escape. Nezuko immediately goes into deep sleep once she's in Tanjiro's arms as Tanjiro runs to escape. Shinobu deems it worthless to chase them as they cannot really bother to lose any more Hashiras. And chasing not one but two upper-level demons would be an invitation to death. The Slayers collect Giyu's body to give it a proper burial, while 𝐏𝐫𝐸𝐒𝐄 calls in a Hashira meeting. On the other end, Muzan's circus, the upper and lower moons, are gathered at the Infinity Castle to break the news of Kokushibo's demise. Muzan's anger over Kokushibo's demise erupts on the lower moons as he asks them why they even exist. The lower moons cower in fear. However, Muzan, being able to read their thoughts and plans of running away, just kills all of them in one fell swoop. Except for Enmu, of course. The other upper moons start to appear one after the other, with Doma appalled at the mess the lower moons made, while greeting Enmu with a sense of familiarity. Muzan, with an agitated expression, reveals that Kokushibo has been defeated in battle, which literally knocks the air out of everyone present on the scene. As the upper moon's jaws hit the floor, Akaza requests that Muzan explain. Muzan reiterates what had happened, which shocks all the upper moons. However, Muzan explains that he has a plan. He plans to corner both the new demons and absorb them into himself before they begin to cause any more trouble. Suddenly, Muzan releases his tentacles and stabs them in the neck of all the upper moons as well as Enmu. He fills them up with more of their blood, making them forcefully reach their peak. However, soon Enmu starts experiencing clots in his body due to a mutation in Muzan's blood and dies at the very spot. Muzan scoffs at Enmu's remains, announcing him as a pathetic weakling, all while promoting Nakime to the rank of Upper Moon 6 and moving everyone up a rank. Meanwhile, at the Hashira meeting, 𝐏𝐫𝐸𝐒𝐄 is suddenly hit by visions of the future, wherein he sees Muzan conquering the sun and starting his conquest to rule the world, which sends a shiver down his spine. 𝐏𝐽𝐸𝐿 relays the information to the Hashiras, who enthusiastically pledge to behead every demon that comes their way, even if it means chopping Muzan down 1,000 times till he dies. 𝐏𝐽𝐸𝐿 analyzes the situation, stating that the newly formed demons are the key to the upcoming battle, and they are the ones standing between Muzan and world dominance. This information shocks the Slayers. However, they plan not to go against the Master's wishes, as his predictions have never been wrong before. All while these two strategic meetings take place during the night, Tanjiro is able to run all the way to Mount Natagumo. Tanjiro rests Nezuko in a rundown house and covers her with his haori. However, suddenly he's attacked by the father spider out of nowhere. Tanjiro is knocked off his feet. However, he soon gains his balance and jumps over to his father spider's head. He then proceeds to dig his nails into the demon's head, pumping it with his blood. As soon as Tanjiro's blood mixes in with that of the father demon, he ignites it with his blood demon art, burning him from the inside. The other members of the spider demon family see the demon's death and decide to bail rather than perish. The other demons are able to run as far as they can. However, the sun starts to dawn, and they start looking for a cave of some kind of shade to hide in. They find an abandoned shrine nearby. However, as soon as they enter it, they encounter some kind of low-level demon slayers camping for the night. A fight erupts and the demon slayers come out on top, partially due to their strength and partially due to the sun coming out and limiting the demons' escape routes. Thus starts the longest day in the history of Japan, with two sides preparing for war, and the third side not even aware that they are going to get sucked into a death battle as soon as the sun sets. On the side of the Slayers, all the fighters nearby are called in for an emergency mission, while Muzan starts to track Tanjiro and Nezuko through Nakime's ability, preparing to unleash his wrath on the siblings for making him exert even this much of himself. Nezuko sleeps all through the day and wakes up just before dusk, recovering from all of her injuries. Tanjiro gets emotional seeing his sister wake up, and they start planning how they're going to get out of the trouble they've been pushed into. But as they're discussing their plans, Nezuko's body begins to violently mutate, with even more tentacles leaving out of her back, along with her nails and teeth changing. However, Tanjiro sings her a lullaby, and their mother used to sing it for them as children, which calms her down, just like how Tanjiro did in the entertainment district in the original timeline. Soon the sun sets, and Tanjiro and Nezuko get ready to head out to their next location. They start running towards Tokyo, but suddenly, when they're running through the forest, smoke bombs get triggered around them, covering covering the area in fog. Tanjiro and Nezuko get confused, but they're suddenly assaulted by a chain ball out of nowhere that separates and wraps around Nezuko, leaving Tanjiro to fend for himself. It is revealed that the Hashiras made the spider demons spit out their location by accident and conclude that it would be best if they were taken care of right here, right now. Tanjiro witnesses Nezuko bound in Gyomei's chains, trying to break through while all the Hashiras surround them. However, she's unable to break them as Gyomei's chains are made of the highest quality scarlet ore in the core. As Nezuko struggles to break free, she once again starts to mutate. Seeing Nezuko in pain, Tanjiro activates his blood demon art, while all the Hashiras clench their swords to behead the demon. Tanjiro rushes towards Nezuko and Gyomei, while all the Hashiras rush towards Tanjiro to behead him. The battle seems to be shifting against Nezuko and Tanjiro as the battle turned into a 9v2 situation. However, as soon as he and the Hashiras were about to clash, something unexpected happened. As Tanjiro rushed towards Nezuko, a huge door to the Infinity Castle opened up right below the Hashiras and sucked all of them in, along with Nezuko and Tanjiro. Finally, Muzan had entered the fray as well to complete his mission of eliminating Nezuko. However, Michael Jackson had hit the jackpot, as he would now be able to cut almost 90% of the strength of the Slayers as well. As soon as everyone is in the Infinity Castle, the rooms surrounding the Slayers and the Kamado siblings start to shuffle. Before anyone could notice, each of the Hashiras was separated into 6 groups. Muichiro and Tengen, Mitsuri and Obanai, Rengoku and Sanemi, Gyomei and Shinobu, and finally Tanjiro too are separated from Nezuko. Muzan rolls his plan into action, wherein Gyomei and Shinobu are attacked by an all-powerful Doma. Muichiro and Tengen come face to face with Gyoko. Mitsuri and Obanai are pitted against Daki and Gyutaro, and Rengoku and Sanemi deal with Hantengu. However, the most interesting of the bouts turned out to be those of Tanjiro and Akaza, while Nezuko is lost in the castle. Gyomei and Shinobu's fight with Doma starts off with a bang, with Shinobu going berserk after realizing that Doma is the same demon that killed her sister Kanae. While Gyomei advises her to stay calm and act rationally, Shinobu starts going out of control. Doma willingly lets Shinobu close the gap, however he keeps Gyomei at arm's length. Soon Shinobu gets trapped in Doma's plan, and he ends up devouring her. However, this actually turns into Doma's worst nightmare, as Doma starts to die from within due to the high concentration of the wisteria poison in Shinobu's blood. Gyomei, having accepted Shinobu's death, swings his axe and deals the final blow, squishing Doma's remaining body into a pulp and finishing him off. Meanwhile, in Rengoku and Sanemi's fight against Hantengu, Hantengu is forced to turn into his 𝐂𝐑𝐄𝐃𝐈𝐓𝐒 form due to the exceptional strength of the duo. However, due to Sanemi's sharp instinct, he soon realizes that 𝐂𝐂𝐃𝐈𝐓𝐻e is not at all what he seems, that there is another one of his clones hiding somewhere. Sanemi cuts open his arm to reveal his Marechi blood, which is successful in luring out Urumi. Rengoku is able to stall 𝐂𝐂𝐃𝐈𝐓𝐻e, while Sanemi finds the real body of Hantengu in Urumi, cutting off the demon's head. But were all the fights going this smoothly? The Demon Slayers had already won 2 fights, but Mitsuri and Obanai seemed to be struggling with their opponents as they had beheaded them several times, but to no avail. Every time Mitsuri would behead Daki easily, and when they would corner Gyutaro and behead him, they would come back to square one as the duo would just regenerate. Obanai then just takes on the weight of fighting Gyutaro himself and instructs Mitsuri to hold off Daki so that they exactly cut off their heads at the same time. Mitsuri is a bit conflicted, but agrees, citing that she believes him. Obanai takes on Gyutaro alone, and in a fierce battle lasting just a few seconds, Obanai gives Mitsuri the signal to behead Daki. Obanai gets stabbed by Gyutaro, poisoned sickles, however he pushes his blade through his neck, matching the timing with Mitsuri and ending the crusade of the Upper Moons. The worst fate in this free-for-all fight is actually suffered by Gyoko, as Tengen and Muichiro turn out to be the perfect match for him. Tengen with his explosives is able to destroy each of Gyoko's teleporting pots, which limits his motion. And even before Gyoko is able to transform into his final form, Muichiro and Tengen are able to gain the upper hand with their superior speed, beheading the demon and cutting off its body into 1,000,000 pieces, ending Gyoko's fishy escapades. However, with everything happening around the castle, the fiercest fight had yet to begin. Running around the castle, Nezuko is able to find Nakime at the center. However, she begins contemplating whether she should fight her or just move on. But before she could decide, Nakime engages her in the conflict as she started manipulating the castle to attack her. Meanwhile, Tanjiro locks his fists with Akaza, who tosses the new demon around very easily due to his superior skills. Akaza acknowledges that Tanjiro might be stronger, however with his newly attained power, he's unable to fully control it, and that his defeating Kokushibo was just a fluke. Tanjiro's struggle begins to catch up to him. However, it all changes when Akaza taunts Tanjiro's family, stating that they would have made great slaves for Muzan. These words by Akaza send Tanjiro over the edge as he starts going berserk. Tanjiro's speed and versatility go beyond what he used against Kokushibo. Soon Akaza realizes that his taunt might actually cost him his life. However, before he could even comprehend what happened, his head was separated from his body and set on fire by Tanjiro's blood demon art. Nezuko soon sees opening in Nakime's attack and ends up killing and absorbing her. However, after a resounding victory by the Demon Slayers, something still seems amiss, and that hypothesis soon clears out when we see the Infinity Castle begin to contract and wrap out of reality after Nakime's death. To everyone's surprise, Muzan had actually won. Muzan was never in the Infinity Castle to begin with. The Demon King had successfully activated his contingency plan by trapping and killing every major roadblock in the Taisho era. And with that, Nezuko's reign of being the strongest demon ends as soon as it starts, with Muzan actually coming out on top. If you didn't like the ending, don't worry, we've actually got a better one planned as the next video, but we'll only release it if you get us 16k likes and 1,000 comments. Until then, if you like this video, watch this video on the screen, which YouTube thinks you'll like even more.